color. This is one of the world's smallest penguins. This penguin is just under 2 feet tall. It's about 20 inches tall. And this penguin is called a rock hopper penguin. So to review, we have three different species of penguins, and now you're getting a really good view of those rock hopper penguins as the Gen 2s moved out of the way. You could see those feathers. They kind of look like he's got a stripe that runs right above his eye and goes to the back of the head. Well, now what I'd like to do is I'd like to play a little game to see if you were all paying attention. And using your observation skills, I am going to hold up some pictures. All right? And these pictures are going to be of the penguins that you just saw. And when I ask you if you think this penguin is whatever name I call it, I want you to give a thumbs up if you think it is that penguin, a thumbs down if you don't think it's that penguin, or maybe thumbs to the side if you have absolutely no idea which penguin it is that I'm showing you. All right, are you ready? Let's see if you can figure out which penguin this is. Oh, I'm just kidding. That's just a white piece of paper. There's no penguin on there. Oh, wait for it. Ready? Whoa, look at the size of that penguin. He's huge. Here, let me give you a little bit of a closer up view of him. Let's see what kind of penguin this might be. We talked a little bit about how to identify this penguin. All right. If you think that this penguin is a king penguin, I want you to put a thumbs up if you think this is a king penguin. If you don't think that this penguin right here is a king penguin, I want you to put your thumbs down. If you have absolutely no idea which penguin this is, I want you to put the thumb to the side. Now, let's see. Now, this is the second largest penguin in all the world. There's a hint. Second largest penguin in all the world. And he's got some yellow up here and a little bit of yellow right there. This was the first penguin I introduced. Is this a king penguin? This is a king penguin. All right, king penguin. If you were paying attention and you got that answer right, give yourself a big old pat on the back for getting that one correct. All right, here comes the next one. Let's see here. Going to give you some hints. We just talked about this penguin right here. This is the third largest penguin in the world. Has distinctive white markings around its eyes and head. Come on down and see if you know what this penguin is. Whoa, there he is. And these are actually life-size pictures, so if I back up a little bit, you'll be able to see how big this penguin is. It's a medium-sized penguin. Very distinct white coloring on its eyes there. If you think this is the Gen 2 penguin, put your thumbs up if you think it's a Gen 2 penguin. Oh, I like what I'm seeing on those answers. If you don't think this is a Gen 2 penguin, put your thumb down. If you have absolutely no idea what penguin this is, you can put your thumb to the side. All right. If you have your thumb up, you are correct. This is a Gen 2 penguin. So very good. All right, that's our second penguin that we just talked about. I bet you could guess what this next penguin is. Well, don't get ahead of yourself now. I might have another picture down here of one of the penguins we already saw, or I might have a different penguin. But you might be able to guess what this next penguin is. We'll see. We'll see. This guy is one of the smallest penguins in the world, and very distinctive because it's got those feathers on the side of its head there that run from its beak all the way to the back of its head. If you think this guy is a rock hopper penguin, give a thumbs up for that. Oh, I like that. Look at that. Almost all of you are getting this right. I love it. This is a rock hopper penguin. Rock hopper penguin. Great job. Now, I told you I have one more picture. One more picture. Now, this one is going to be a little bit tricky. as we saw these other penguins, we had ways to identify which species they are through color, through size, through very distinctive features. Well, this next penguin doesn't really have the colors that would identify it. However, its size will help you to identify this next penguin. This penguin is a baby penguin. It's a chick. And I'll give you a hint. It's the chick of the second largest penguin in the world. Can you see this guy? Whoa, look how fuzzy. Look at how fuzzy that guy is. I don't know if you can see it very well because of the lighting, but this guy is all brown, and like I said, he's the chick of the second largest penguin in the world. So, if you think that this chick is a king penguin chick, put your thumb up. If you don't think this penguin's a king penguin chick, put your thumb down. And if you don't have any idea, you can put it to the side. Oh, look at all that. You guys are sleuths. You guys are really good at this. This is a king penguin chick. Really cool thing to know. King penguin chicks are all brown. So if you're watching a Discovery Channel, if you're watching a National Geographic channel or the History Channel or one of those channels where you see penguins and they're talking about them and you see a brown chick, it could be that you're looking at a king penguin chick. Now, why do I say that? If you happen to see a penguin chick that is all gray with a little bit of white on the head and all gray, that is the emperor penguin chick. Now, I've been standing here and I've been showing you pictures and I've been talking. Right now, I'm going to see if any of you have any questions to this point. So once again, you can raise your hand physically. You can use the raise hand function in the Zoom, or you could type it in the chat. So, does anybody have any questions at the moment? Does anybody have any questions? I have 3 pages of students right now, so I have to scroll through my screen to be able to see all of you. So if I don't answer your question or I don't call on you, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's just that I might not see you right away. Morgan, do you have a question, or are you just stretching? Oh, you might have just been stretching. Okay.
If you guys want to type your question in the chat box and I can read it to him or he can read it, you could do it that way too.
Where do all these penguins live? That is a very good question. As I stated earlier, all penguins live in the southern hemisphere of our world. Now, some of these penguins live in the actual continent of Antarctica, and some of these penguins live in regions right around Antarctica in the water and a lot of the islands and areas that are in Antarctica, in the Antarctic area. Do they crossbreed? No, they do not. So our penguins, and this leads to some discussion. Our penguins, or most penguins, will lay eggs twice a year. Our penguins only lay 1 egg. Every time they lay an egg, it's only 1 egg. And it's usually in the fall time where we are. It's usually around the November time frame that they start laying. What is the temperature of the penguin enclosure there? It's about 40 degrees in there. So it's not extremely cold like it would get down in Antarctica in those areas, but it's cold enough that our penguins feel comfortable and like it in there. And as you can see, if I go over to it, you might be able to see You see that snow falling there? There's some snow falling in the exhibit. You can see it falling down. Our aquarium makes snow every single day, and our keepers will actually get into the exhibit, and they will start shoveling it, and they'll actually throw it around in there so our penguins have a place to play in the snow and to lay in the snow and to get a little bit cooler. And you'll notice that right now it is really bright in there. We keep our penguins almost like it would be in nature, where the light cycle, there's times in the year when the lights are on almost 24 hours a day because they don't get a lot of darkness. Or at other times of the year, you could come in here and it'd be really dark in here and they have the lights turned really down because that time of the year where they live, there's not a lot of light. Oh, that's a really good question too. And we're actually going to get to that question. The question is, why do they live 70% of the time in the water? Now, why would they do that? Well, the answer to that is food. Food. So what do penguins eat? Well, our penguins, when they're in the wild, penguins will eat a variety of different aquatic animals, ranging from fish to squid, to krill, to crabs. All of those species, or most of those species, sometimes the crabs will come up on land, live in the water. And in order for the penguin to eat as much as it eats, they got to be in the water a lot. And some really cool facts. Here's some really cool facts. And I'm actually going to ask you a question here. Our penguins can dive pretty deep in the water, depending on where their food is at. So if you think, and this is going to be a different exercise, if you think that a penguin can dive down into the water over 1,000 feet deep, if you think a penguin can go that deep, I want you to stand up and raise your hands way above your head as an indication that, yes, penguins can dive over 1,000 feet in the water. If you don't think they can, you can reach down here and swing your hands down by your knees. I like what I'm seeing. I like it. I like it. You guys are great participants. I like it. And you are correct. Our king penguins have been recorded to dive over 1,000 feet in the water. Whew, that's pretty deep. Some of our other penguins, they dive anywhere between 300 and 600 feet, depending on where, like I said, depending on where their food is at. All right. Oh, here's a question. What type of penguin is my favorite penguin? I'm partial to the king penguin, just because of how beautiful it looks with all its colors and its size. I'm a pretty big individual, so I can relate to the size of the penguin, you know, being a big person, and it's like the second largest penguin in all the world. So I love how you guys are all asking questions. Penguins are pretty popular. Lots of people like to come in here and see our penguins. Oh, this is a very good question. What do you feed the penguins at the zoo? And as a matter of fact, at about 10:30, I'm going to actually start talking about what these penguins eat, because there's a special time at 10:30 every single day where our keepers will actually come into this exhibit and they're going to start feeding the penguins. So that's going to be a part of this presentation as well. So it's a good question. All right. So we're going to move on here. I'm sorry I didn't get to all your questions, but I can come back to them here in a little while. And we're going to actually play another game. And I would like you to take a look at these penguins that are in our exhibit, because there's a couple of them that are moving around. So we're going to talk about the way that penguins move. Here's one of the ways that penguins move. What do you think they're doing there? They're swimming. That's one of the ways that our penguins get around, as they swim. And if they spend 70% of their lives in water, over 70% of their lives in water, they are excellent, expert swimmers. Now, penguins are flightless birds. So they have an adaptation that allows them to be excellent expert swimmers. Their flippers and the muscles that are in their body are designed to help propel them through the water. And earlier, I told you that I was going to talk about the Gen 2 penguin. And I was going to give you a really cool fact about the Gen 2 penguin. Now, I'm going to ask you a quick question here. And I want to see some thumbs up or thumbs down or raised hands. How many of you think that if you jumped in the water, you could outswim a penguin? You could go faster than a penguin when you're swimming. Oh, I like how realistic all these guys are being out there. Well, I have a cool statistic here. There is a swimmer, a world famous, world champion swimmer who has the most gold medals of any human in Olympic gold medals. His name's Michael Phelps. And he was on TV a few years ago, and they were doing an experiment. Scientists were doing an experiment to see how fast an Olympic champion swimmer can go, and if that Olympic swimming champion could go faster than a shark. And the scientists discovered that Michael Phelps could swim up to 7 miles an hour. The shark was a little bit faster than that. But how does that relate to our penguins that we're talking about here? Well, the Gen 2 penguin, which is the fastest underwater bird in the world, can swim up to 22 miles an hour. And that is pretty fast. 22 miles an hour. I think maybe I could go maybe an inch an hour if I tried to swim. I could doggy paddle or something like that. But that's one of the things I want to show you as well. We're going to look at these penguins again because we got lots of penguins in there and they're swimming around and when you watch these penguins when they're swimming, what do you notice about them? Are they using all of their body? Are they using just their flippers? Are they using their feet? What about you? When you swim, do you just use your arms? Do you use your feet and your arms? Well, our penguins, they just use their flippers when they swim. And they use their feet as a rudder to kind of steer them when they need to turn and change directions. So swimming is one of the ways that our penguins move. Another way that our penguins move, you'll see one of these guys right there. They just went screaming by. Look at him, there he is. They walk or waddle. They waddle around. Now, as you're looking at these, I would like to introduce you to a friend of mine. So these penguins, they waddle. I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine. This here is Pebbles. Hello. Hello, how are you? How are you? Good to see you. And Pebbles here loves to sing a song. And she sings a song that's called Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes, Knees and Toes. Head, Shoulders, Knees and Toes, Knees and Toes. Does anybody know that song? I see a couple of people smacking their foreheads and kind of going, oh, yes. But she always gets frustrated at a point in this song. And it's applicable to this song. So she sings, she goes, head, she has a head, shoulders, and she has feet down here. There's some feet there. There's head, shoulders. Does she have knees? Does she have knees? Oh, I see some heads bobbing certain directions. She actually does have knees, but they're up inside of her body. You can't see them. They're up in there. So I would like all of you to get up out of your chairs. Get up out of your chairs. Get up out of your beds. Get up, get up, get up, get up. We're going to move. Now, we have knees. We have knees. Well, here's what I would like you all to do. When you walk around, you bend your knees and you strut your stuff. Well, let's try to walk forward without using our knees. Move forward without using your knees. Oh, look, you're waddling like a penguin. All right, let's move backwards without using our knees. Oh, look at that. There you go. You're waddling like a penguin. Oh, I got another one. Let's see if you can jump without using your knees. Ugh. Ugh. No using your knees, just your toes. Ugh. Ugh. I can't jump very high when I'm using just my toes. I got to use my knees. Well, our rockhopper penguins can jump as high as their shoulders without. Oh, can you imagine that? Can you jump as high as I can't even jump a couple of inches off the ground, let alone as high as my shoulders. So there you go. There's another way that penguins move. They waddle. And there's a third way the penguins move around. I wonder if you know what it is. Some of you that have been able to come to Children's Adventure Trails here at Omaha Henry Dooley Zoo may play on those green mounds that are in there, and you slide down them. You may even lay on your belly and slide down those hills. The way that these penguins move, the third way that they move, is it's called tobogganing. They toboggan, which means they waddle forward, and then they lay down on their bellies, and they shoot forward on the snow. Or they get to a hill, and they lay down, and they go zoom right down to the bottom of the hill. That is the third way that our penguins move. They toboggan. And it helps when you're tobogganing to have the proper tools. Tools? What do you mean tools? Does that mean like a hammer and a screwdriver? Tools? Well, when I say tools, I'm talking about their feathers. Their feathers. Now, what's interesting about their feathers? Earlier, I showed you a picture of a baby penguin. And you may have noticed that baby penguin's feathers are a lot different than the feathers that are on the penguins that are grown and are adults. That has to do with keeping the baby penguin warm as it grows. Now, the baby penguins, if you can believe it or not, they go from a little bitty egg. And to give you an idea of the size of this egg, this is about the size of a chicken egg. And this right here is our king penguin egg. They're a whole lot bigger. And those penguins go from that egg to fully grown in 3 months. 3 months. Could you imagine if you were full grown in 3 months? What would you do? But in that 3 months, those baby penguins, they'll lose that fluffy fluffy feathers that help keep them warm, and they'll start to grow their waterproof feathers. Now, that is very important to understand. Baby penguins, when they have their down feathers, cannot get wet, or they're not supposed to get wet. If they get wet, they could get really, really cold and potentially die. So here at the zoo, when we have baby chicks, we try to keep them away from the water, and sometimes you might see there's a little enclosure put in there so that our penguins can stay out of the water. When they're in the wild, the penguins just naturally will stay out of the water when they're chicks, and they'll start to grow. Now, what's cool about the feathers of a penguin, I'm going to show you a close-up view of a penguin feather. And you can look at that. This is a penguin feather. Now, this feather is very, very different than what you would see on a bird that flies. These feathers have a special adaptation that helps keep the penguin warm and dry when it's in the water, as opposed to a flying bird whose feather looks like this. This feather is from a blue and gold macaw, a flying bird. And you can see that the feather is very, very different. This feather is designed to help the bird fly, but not necessarily to help keep water off of the bird. So that brings up another question. Are penguins have feathers? Are penguins are born from eggs? Do they have fur? Let me see. Let me see your responses. Thumbs up or thumbs down if penguins have fur. If penguins have fur, thumbs up if they have fur. Thumbs down if you think they don't have fur. Oh, thumbs to the side if you don't know if they have fur or not. Oh, I like some of the responses I'm seeing in there. Awesome. Penguins do not have fur. As we were saying, they have feathers. Now you might be asking, well, what fur is this animal from? This fur is from a leopard. You know how I know that this fur is from a leopard? Because it says it right there on the back. It says leopard right there on the back. No, no, I'm kidding. Just by the way that they have their spots, they are different. You'll be able to tell them apart from something like a cheetah. All right, so here's another question for you. You may have been studying, you may know this. Thumbs up is a yes, thumbs down is a no. Are penguins mammals? Are penguins mammals? Now let's see. How do we define a mammal? Well, mammals give birth to live young. They have fur, and they feed their young milk. So those are some hints. Are penguins mammals? Oh, I like what I'm seeing. Like it, I like it, I like it. Go, you guys are so smart. Look at that. Penguins are not mammals. They are animals, but they don't fall under the mammal classification. They're birds. Okay, I'm going to give you a really easy one now. We've been looking at all these penguins. We're looking at these penguins. Some of them may have opened their mouths. Some of them may not have. Do penguins have teeth? Do penguins have teeth? I like how you all are saying penguins don't have teeth. They're birds. They have beaks. Beaks. And that leads me to the next thing of the question. How do our penguins eat? Or what do they eat? Well, a little while ago, I answered that question. Penguins eat fish. They eat squid. They eat krill. They eat crab. Well, here at the zoo, oh, and look at this. Perfect timing. This was just like an awesome lead-in. Right there in the picture, you're getting a view of our keepers. They're going to start feeding our penguins. Oh, look at that. He's trying to give them some food. Our penguins, when we're in the zoo, get fed fish. Now, you'll notice, I don't know if I can get a good close-up. The other bucket might be behind this keeper. There are two buckets. There is a metal bucket, and there is a clear bucket. And there is a difference between the fish that are in the clear bucket and in the metal bucket. The metal bucket are just herring, just a type of fish. There are herring in the white clear bucket, but those fish have vitamins in them. So to help keep our penguins healthy, strong. They get extra nutrients and and minerals from vitamins. You'll see to our keepers, to the one side of our keeper here, you'll see a young lady right there with her back to us. She is keeping track of how many fish each of our penguins get. And you might be thinking, well, how do they know? I mean, all these penguins look the same. I mean, they've got yellow on them, and all the yellow ones look the same. And all the Gen 2 penguins look the same. Well, earlier in the program, I pointed out that all of our penguins are wearing bracelets. They're all wearing bracelets. And if you see one of these penguins when you come down to the aquarium, and you see one of these penguins and it has a black bracelet on its flipper, it is a boy penguin. If you see a penguin when you come on down here and it's wearing a white bracelet, that is a girl penguin. Now you might say to yourself, well, okay, that's awesome. But what about the penguins that have the bright colored bracelet? Well, those penguins are actually juvenile penguins that have lost their down feathers. So we'll see if I can zoom in, because there's a couple of Gen 2 penguins that have the bright colored bracelets. See that penguin right there in the middle of the screen? It's got a bright pink bracelet on. That is a Gen 2 penguin that is a juvenile. So as you can see, it took this penguin 3 months to grow up, but it looks the same size as all the other Gen 2 penguins. But it is not quite fully an adult yet. The other way that our keepers can tell these penguins which penguin is what is that on those bracelets are brightly colored beads, and each of the beads represents a number. So you'll see a couple of beads on there that might say 125, or another bead that might say, the sequence of beads might mean that it's 197. And so you can see that each time our keeper gives a fish to the bird, he'll actually call out a number, and that young lady that they're standing there with the clipboard, she's actually recording all of the fish that they eat. And now our keepers don't necessarily say, oh, you've had your 3 fish, that's all the fish you're getting today. That's not how it works. They'll keep trying to give the fish to the penguin until the penguin decides it's had enough. And how do the keepers know when the penguin has had enough? Well, just like when you don't want to eat your spinach, or when you don't want to eat your vegetables, or you can say, I don't like it, man. Well, the penguins don't do that, but they just turn away and they walk away. They're good. I'm good. I don't need anything else. Now, we've talked a couple times about our chick penguins. Well, how in the world do the keepers feed the chick penguins? Do the chick penguins eat the same thing as the juvenile and adult penguins? I wonder. Well, they're penguins, and they eat fish and squid and krill and crab. So that must mean that the chicks, they eat the same thing. Well, if you promise to not get grossed out, I've got a video here of a Gen 2 penguin mom feeding her chick. Now, I have to warn you, some of you might think this is a little gross, because the way a penguin chick eats is through a process called regurgitation. That's a giant word. Basically, that means barf. The mama penguin, or the daddy penguin, because both parents actually take care of the chick, will throw up what it's eaten, and the baby penguin will eat it. And that's called regurgitation. So I'm going to show you, and I'll show you how this baby penguin eats. So what you see there is you see the baby chick, it's all fuzzy, and it's going peck, 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 saying, hey, mom, mom, hey, 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 mom, 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 hey, dad, hey, mom or dad, I'm hungry. Oh, you see what's happening? Mom's kind of going, ooh, huh, 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 num 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 num. Oh, here we go again. Num 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 nums. That is how baby penguins get fed. So there you go. There's a little trivia question you can say to all your friends who weren't able to come and see this. How do baby penguins eat? A little bit of throw up in their mouth. All right. Well, I've been talking and talking and talking and talking, so it's time again for some questions. All right. Who has some questions? Oh, here we go. Do we have any baby penguins right now? We do not. As I said, we have some juveniles, but our penguins lay eggs usually right around November, December timeframe. And so we actually had some baby penguin hatching last year at the end of the year. We had some baby penguins. So we don't have any right now. Why do they eat fish? I think that's just a question of nature. It's kind of that question of why do other animals eat eat certain things? That is just how they develop. There was an abundant food source in fish, and the penguins were like, oh, this is a good food to eat, so we're going to eat this. And they don't just eat fish. Like I said, they eat squid and crab and krill, which is a smaller type of sea life. And as I talk about food and fish, there's an important thing that it's a good segue to bring up. Most of the 17 species of penguin are threatened or endangered. Now, why is that? Mostly because of habitat loss, global warming, climate change, but also the temperature changes, they're losing their food sources. Their food sources are becoming less and less, which causes a competition between other species of penguin, and it's causing the populations to decline. So one of the things that we could do as humans is we can make sure that when we're eating seafood or when we're doing things, we're checking to see if the food that we're eating is sustainable. Well, sustainable, what does that mean? Well, sustainable means that the food that you're eating comes from a source that is not over harvesting that particular food source, and it's responsibly collecting the food so that there is more food for future use. Oh, that is a very good question. From how long can they be underwater? Oh, that is a very good question. Depending on how far they dive, depends on how much they can hold their breath. Our king penguins can actually hold their breath for over 20 minutes. Now, it takes a long time to dive over 1,000 feet, so depending on how deep their food is, they'll hold their breath for about that long. So the king penguins, which are the bigger penguins, hold their breath for about 20 minutes. Some of our smaller penguins, they don't need to hold their breath for that long. And when you see them here swimming in our aquarium, they only hold their breath for a few minutes at a time. And that's mostly because they don't need to really hold their breath for that long. I love watching our penguins swim. They're so cool. Another cool fact about our penguins when you see them swimming, sometimes you'll watch them and they will swim under the water and they'll pop out of the water and then they'll dive back in the water. And they'll pop out of the water and they'll dive back into the water. That is a maneuver called porpoising. And when they porpoise, that just actually gives the penguin more speed. so that it'll go a little bit faster. How long do penguins sleep? Well, it depends. Kind of like your dog. You know, when it's tired, it sleeps. When it's not, it's awake. So most of our penguins right now, they're awake. But if you come back in another hour, some of them might be sleeping. Now, they're all, some of them, you know how when you eat too much, you kind of get sleepy? So now they're all eating. So in a few hours, or, you know, maybe a half an hour or so, they're all probably going to just be standing around because they're all tired and they're sleepy. How heavy can they get? That is a very good question. Depending on the species of penguin, our king penguins there can get up to 40 pounds. So 35 to 40 pounds. Our Gen 2 penguins, they're between 10 and 20 pounds, and our rockhopper penguins are a little bit less than that. Did you get rid of any? Well, that is an interesting question. We don't necessarily, in the sense, say, "Oh, we're tired of you penguins. We're going to get rid of them." That's not really how our zoo works. And actually, to give you a little bit of insight on how zoos operate, when you are a member of something called the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, you are part of a very, very large global network that has a combined collection of animals. And when a species of animal is threatened or endangered or at risk of going extinct, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums will try and maintain those populations so that they survive. How do they do that? Well, they keep track of all of the genetics that are in that specific species population. What is genetics? What does that mean? Well, it's similar to how you have dark hair, or how you have red hair, or how you have blonde hair, or how you have brown eyes or blue eyes, or the color of your skin, or if you have freckles or not. That's all genetics. Well, depending on the rarity of the genetics in the species or the animal, they will have specific breeding programs where they try to keep a very diverse genetic population. So let's say some of our penguins in here have really, really valuable genetics. Well, what'll happen is let's say there's a zoo somewhere on the west coast of the United States that doesn't have any penguins. Well, what'll happen is we will breed our penguins to help grow that genetic diversity, and then we will send those penguins to the other zoo. We do not actually go out into the wild and grab the penguins and bring them here. If we have too many penguins and there's another zoo that doesn't have any penguins, we will actually share our penguins with another zoo. That way, we don't have too many of them, so we don't really get rid of them. We share them with other zoos around the world. Very good question. All right, let's see. Do we name them? I don't believe that our penguins have any names. There are some other animals that we have fewer of that do have names, but our keepers actually keep track of all of our penguins, like I said, through those beads that are on their arm that they wear on their bracelets. Here's another penguin. How tall are king penguins? Well, our king penguins, like I said earlier, can get to between 3.5 and 4 feet tall. They're 3 to 3.5 feet. So our king penguin right there is about, if you're in first grade, that's about as tall as you are and you're in first grade. How high can they jump? Well, if our rockhopper penguin is about 20 inches tall, which is just under 2 feet tall, and it can jump as high as its shoulders, that's about 2 feet. All right. I love how all of you are asking questions. I wish I could get to all your questions, but I have one more thing I want to talk to you about, and I don't want to run out of time. So I have another guest here to show you. Now, you got to promise me, though, when I bring out this next guest, you're not going to get scared, because this guy's a pretty ferocious guy. His name's Olaf, and you got to promise not to get scared. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm gonna bring him out here. Okay, so hold on a second. Roar. 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 All right, so maybe Olaf isn't really that scary. He's a polar bear. He's a polar bear. I got a question for you. My friend here, Pebbles. How many of Pebbles do you think that my buddy Olaf here has to eat in a day to get all nice and full? So show me on your hands, how many of Pebbles here does Olaf have to eat in order to get all full up? Oh, I see lots of hands. Ooh. And maybe that's a little bit unfair because it's sort of a trick question. How is it a trick question? Well, if you remember, I was talking earlier about Pebbles here, and all of her cousins and all the other different species of penguins all live in the southern hemisphere of our world, down in Antarctica, or the Antarctic region. My buddy Olaf here, he lives in the north hemisphere and the North Pole in the Arctic. So these two guys, the answer actually is 0. 0. My buddy Olaf here doesn't ever eat any of Pebbles at all because they never actually meet because they're in two different parts of the world. One is all the way down here and one is all the way up here. So you see those commercials on TV when they're sharing a soda? They don't ever really meet, not unless they go on vacation. But I don't know any penguins or polar bears that have ever gone on vacation to, have a soda together. But I also want to show you one last thing. I just think this is really cool because we were just talking about polar bears. So I have a biofact here that is actually from a polar bear. So I'm going to show this to you. You can take a look at it here. This is actually a claw from Olaf. Whoa, that's pretty huge. It's a pretty big bear. Roar. Now, I didn't talk about how many different penguins we have in here. And I don't know if I saw a question where we had any. We have a total of 84 penguins here in our exhibit. Now, there's more that are actually behind the scenes and that we have that aren't actually out here that we're taking care of. But we have 84 of these penguins on exhibit right now. All right, one last time. We're going to answer some more questions here. How heavy do I name them? How old do they get? Ooh, that's a very good question. It varies once again between, if you're talking about how old they get in the wild, they live between 15 and 20 years. Now, that might be a little bit longer under human care, and here's the reason why. They have veterinary care if they get sick. They have all the food that they could want. They don't have to compete for the food, and they don't have animals trying to eat them. Well, if we know that our buddy Olaf doesn't eat penguins because they're two different parts of the world, what animals do eat penguins? Well, some of the predators that penguins have to worry about, and you might have guessed it already, they live in the water. So seals, sea lions, and whales, and sometimes even birds will eat the chick. Those are the different predators that penguins have to be aware of when they're in the water. Part of the reason that our penguins are so fast, or our Gentoo penguin is so fast, it could go 22 miles an hour, is so that it can, number one, catch fish, and number two, so that it can get away from the things that are trying to eat it.
All right. Any more questions? Do we got any more questions? Ooh, here's a good one. Do penguins get mad or fight each other? Well, our penguins, they don't really fight a whole lot. The most that you'll ever see our penguins get aggravated to each other, they kind of do a little thing where it's kind of like, they'll kind of like do this with their beaks at each other. They just kind of go like this. And that'll be about as aggressive as our penguins will ever get with each other. So they don't really fight. And most of the time they get aggravated and do that beak thing is when one of them gets too close to the other one, and it happens a lot when our birds start nesting. So nesting, but they live in the Antarctic area where there's not a whole lot of trees. What the heck do they build their nests out of? Good question. Out of rocks. Out of rocks. They'll build nests out of rocks, and when they lay an egg, our Gentoo penguins, when they lay, like they'll lay on that egg on a rock nest. And when other penguins kind of get close to that nest, they'll kind of nip at each other and say, hey, don't get too close to me. Oh my goodness, we're almost out of time. All right, do we have any other questions? Oh, AJ, do you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. You're just waving your hand. All right, just making sure you don't have a question.
Making sure that doesn't turn in.
All right. Any other questions? Okay.
Nikki had a question, Kip. Let me see if I can spotlight her.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Gotcha. I think. There you go.
Oh, hi. Do you have a question? Go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can answer. You can ask your question.
Kimmy, you're unmuted. Go ahead and talk.
How fast they get?
Say that again, sweetie. I'm sorry, you're breaking
How
up there.
fast do they get?
How fast are the penguins? Is that your question?
How fat do they
Oh,
get?
how fat do they get? Well, if you're talking about fat, as in how much do they eventually weigh, you can, as I said, our king penguins can get up to anywhere between 35 and 40 pounds. And our Gentoo penguins are a little bit lighter than that. They get up to be, anywhere between 15 and 20 pounds. And then our rockhopper penguins are a little bit lighter than that. They're roughly around 10 pounds. So as you can see here if I'll zoom in on one of our penguins again, these guys right here, these king penguins, they're about 3.5 feet tall and they're about 40 pounds. So that's how big they are. All right, everybody, that's about it. It's at 11 o'clock. So I would like to thank all of you for participating today, for paying attention, for being such fantastic guests here today on our discovery journey of penguins. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank
Are we
you.
gonna learn about
You're
something?
welcome. Bye. Bye,
Okay,
everybody.
video games now. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. See ya.